Welcome to Flare to Fortune, where we turn wasted energy into Bitcoin. I'm your host, Jon Taylor. Today, we're going to talk about the halving coming up. The halving is where Bitcoin becomes twice as difficult and there's less rewards coming up. That happens in March of 2028. Today, we're going to dive into the economics of Bitcoin mining, the importance of decentralization, and why this moment might be the best opportunity to start mining Bitcoin at a cost far below market price. We'll break down the myths, explore the realities of home mining, and discuss why non-KYC Bitcoin is more important than ever. My guest today is someone who didn't just stumble into Bitcoin, she found her calling in it. Jill Ford is a Bitcoin mining professional and educator who has discovered her passion for decentralized finance through an unexpected career pivot. After responding to a LinkedIn ad about Bitcoin mining, Jill dove headfirst into the industry and never looked back. Today, she specializes in helping people, especially women, understand Bitcoin mining and take control of their financial future. From navigating ASIC selection and mining strategies to understanding the deeper philosophy of financial sovereignty, Jill brings both technical expertise and a passionate commitment to Bitcoin's promise of freedom. You can learn more about Jill's work at Bit4 Digital, where she offers consulting and education for those looking to enter the Bitcoin mining space. Jill, thank you so much for being on the show today. Flare to Fortune. We're going to talk about using wasted energy and turning it into Bitcoin. And you've been in this space for so long, so thank you for giving us some insight into mining, how the machines work, and everything else. So thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you about all things mining.
Yeah, mining is an exciting time. And in our previous conversation, you had mentioned that right now you can mine a Bitcoin for about $60,000 to $70,000. And with the halving coming in about 30 months in March of 2028, mining rewards will be cut in half by difficulty doubles. So walk us through the economics. What does it mean for miners, and how should people be thinking about acquiring Bitcoin versus post-halving?
Right. So you want to acquire Bitcoin through mining now because, the block reward just back in May, it went, well, not this May, but the previous May, it just went from 6.25 BTC and it went down to 3.125. So in 2028, it's going to go down to half of that. So what that means is that you are mining Bitcoin and you receive a reward. Well, you're going to receive half of the reward that you normally would have received. Now, I've heard theories that, well, it doesn't really matter because Bitcoin price is going to go up. So it'll make, but I actually think that theory is false in a way because Bitcoin doesn't automatically go up overnight in the halving. A lot of miners face financial difficulty after the halving because it's a shock. They're used to receiving a certain amount and now their ROI is taking a lot longer. So yes, while in theory it does eventually go up, at first it's hard. There's some blood, sweat, and tears that happen during this time. You'll see companies going out of business and if they're not planning for it. I would suggest this is a really sweet spot right now that we're in. It's the end of 2025. Our next halving event is in 2028. You're still getting that full 3.125. And, some miners believe in hodling and some don't. Some sell, immediately as they mine. But the people that hodl or the miners that hodl, I really feel reap the largest rewards because you're able to, well, let's say you've been hodling since May of the last halving, you'd be up quite a bit. So you're making the most profits by hodling. So yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. When you are stacking the Bitcoin and not using it for operating, that is the best scenario for a mining operation business. It's taking maybe like a retirement fund or capital gains from real estate, putting it into mining, and then letting that the system of mining make Bitcoin for half the price that you can buy it for, and at the end, the rewards are greater.
Exactly. And we'll get into this more later, but mining is non-KYC, which is my favorite part of mining. So you can't get any better than fresh Bitcoin well, not really printed, but mined right off the press, and it's non-KYC. Like you just can't go wrong there.
And talk a little bit more about that. So, as a supplier, you see the mining landscape up close, and why is home mining an important decentralization point along with this KYC? And give people a little bit of insight into what that means, and why that's important for somebody who's mining Bitcoin.
Yeah, so, home mining is vital for the decentralization because it ensures that the block production is not restricted to a few industrial data centers or the big guys. So, you know, it's important that we mine at home, or you could not mine at home, but just have the smaller guys are mining. It's important. It keeps the network decentralized because you'll see these big companies like Core Scientific and Riot get online, and they have thousands and thousands of units, and you're like, how can I compete with that? Well, that really doesn't support the decentralization of Bitcoin, because if their units go offline, then, well, it would affect the difficulty. So home mining is super important because it keeps the core ethos of Bitcoin. It keeps it decentralized. And that's really important. It's important that we all mine. So, a diverse network, is resilient to things that could happen as well. Like natural disasters and, things like that happen around the globe and around the grid. So, I mean, having people, even small and larger people that are mining, actually strengthen the grid. So, like, let's say a Texas storm comes through, and then all the Texas data centers are no longer mining. Well, then, if they were the only ones mining in the whole United States or the whole world, then Bitcoin wouldn't be. It wouldn't have its security. It wouldn't be secure. So I think it's just so important that everyone does their part in mines, not only just to promote decentralization, but also, to keep the big guys on their toes. So
Yeah. Speaking of decentralization, we talked a little bit offline about the government may force custody of Bitcoin at financial institutions, similar to what happened with gold, if they required citizens to hold Bitcoin only through banks so they could lend it out and control it and centralize the decentralization, the opposite of what we want to do. What would that look like, and what would happen if people would resist?
So, well, the government loves to steal our time. So they would definitely put in fines and penalties, which would make you work harder and steal your time that way, but also put you in prison. I mean, I don't want to say the government wants everyone in prison because it obviously needs people out to pay taxes. But at the same time, they want to put fear in you. They're really great at fear mongering. So that is the main thing. So right now is like the golden age of Bitcoin. The government isn't too involved in your Bitcoin unless you are, involved in some illegal activity. So they usually typically leave you alone. But I do see the government wanting more information because, just in the last 5 years, they put that little area on your tax return where you need to put your wallet address. Well, why is it their business that I have to give you my wallet address? I might have 12 wallets. That's not,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have enough lines to list them. There's just so many what ifs. I think the most important part in mining and in Bitcoin is cold storage and having it off the internet. But then I go on to think, okay, so let's say eventually the government wants to keep track of all the Bitcoin. It's all on the blockchain, so it wouldn't be hard to keep track of all the addresses and start to KYC to the people based on like who's logging in where. I mean, there's just so much tracking going on these days. It just wouldn't. I'm not going to put it past them to find new ways to track and monitor us. So essentially, my thought is, let's say I do have it on a cold wallet, and it's essentially buried in my backyard, right? Well, one day I may need to really use that. And when I start to use that wallet, what if the government it pings them like this wallet is now being in use? Well, I think that so it's at the end of the day, I'm like, yes, you should use cold storage. It's important, you know, but governmental control is always going to be there. But I do think that you need these safeguards because you never know what's going to happen in life.
Yeah, you don't. And in 1971, Nixon ended the gold standard, and we went to, there's some argument that we went to the oil standard. And there's some speculation that with the reset of the monetary system every 50 years, we're right in the middle of it. And are we witnessing another fundamental shift towards CBDCs and blockchain-based money? And where does Bitcoin fit into that transition, or does it?
Yeah, we are on the cusp of the CBDC era. So I definitely see that because, well, you see a lot of other countries not backing their currency by US dollar. So the United States definitely feels like, oh no, I need to do something. And they know the inflation. They know the result of a debt-based society. They know
Mm-hmm.
it. They don't want us to know it. They know it. So yeah, I do think that the physical tangible dollars and, our bank accounts, how it's all digital now, I think it's just going to slide right over to CBDC. It's going to be a really smooth process and no one's really going to notice it. So, I mean, they're just going to think, okay, well, I'm just Zelling, like Zelle is like almost an intro to maybe a CBDC because it's like sending money from bank to bank or wallet to wallet. So they're going to just make these products that just seem like it's just a new technology upgrade when really we're participating in a CBDC and that is very dangerous. So we
Yeah.
don't want the government to have control of our money because we don't want someone telling us when it's okay to spend money and when it's not okay to spend money. And they can do that with a CBDC. Actually, they can do it to us right now with our debit cards because often I go into stores and it might decline because I'm traveling and it's just a hassle to pay for things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's just more about controlling the wealth, and it's going to move over to that. What's great about Bitcoin is that they can't control it, and that's why, well, I'd say they don't like it, but I think that they are starting to like it with this new Trump era. Well, because I think it's gaining him a lot of wealth, but also they're going to act like they like it so that our community gets excited and the price rallies up, but it's all manipulated.
It is. Do you think, going a little bit on the political side, Trump holds about $800 million worth of
Yeah.
Bitcoin, and there's
Or in the government.
there is some speculation that he has almost $3 billion in crypto, and the government is stacking it aggressively. Do you see this as genuine adoption, or is it market manipulation? And what happens after he leaves office in 2028, if he leaves office? And are we looking at a manufactured Bitcoin recession?
Well, how funny is it that he leaves office in 2028 during the recession? I mean, during the halving, sorry. And I
Yeah,
even say recession. Like, yeah, I definitely see a Bitcoin recession during that time. But it's so manipulated because you look at the people that are buying it on a weekly basis, Michael Saylor, BlackRock, Trump, even the government, they've seized a lot of Bitcoin themselves. So they know the value in it. They do see it as a threat because they can't control it without owning a lot of it.
mhm.
So they want to own a lot of it. But what Bitcoin does is it only produces, what is it, like 400 coins a day?
Yeah, it's like
Like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, something like that. So there's only so much they can buy a day. But at the same time, like your average everyday person, like I can't go buy even a Bitcoin a day or half a Bitcoin a day, or even a quarter of a Bitcoin. Like that's just not realistic. So really, the people with money are buying up Bitcoin, whether through, their different corporations or through Michael Saylor because they want to control it. Because when the people with wealth control the wealth, they get wealthier
They do. The money
and we
making
get
money.
poorer.
Yep. So there's a tension, and Bitcoin was designed as a peer to peer electronic cash, but its function is more of a store of wealth. It never really evolved into that. Do you see Bitcoin ever becoming a transactional currency, or is it destined to be a digital gold that government stacks while creating their own USDC or CBDC?
Yeah, so my viewpoint on Bitcoin is that it's a digital gold. It's a store of value. And the reason why it can't ever be, like a like a USDC or USDT is the transaction times and the processing. It just takes too long to get to point A to point B. So if I go to McDonald's and I want to pay in Bitcoin, um, it's going to take 10-15 minutes. And what if that fails? I've already gotten my food, ate, and left by that point. So that's why they developed the Lightning Network. But at the same time, it's also another thing. It's complicated as someone who has lived their whole life on USD to change your mindset to like sats and stacking sats. It takes a little while, like I can't say in my mind $1 is this many sats. Um, it's
Yeah.
just a whole shift. It's a learning curve. So instead of like throwing satoshis at you, they're going to create like a one for one, like USDT, USDC does. $1 is $1. But you're not seeing the behind the scenes of that $1 is now worth 53 cents. It's worth, it's up and down. Whereas Bitcoin is more transparent. You see what one Bitcoin is worth. So I definitely think that they're not going to use Bitcoin. What they will do is they'll take the CBDC and they may say, okay, well, one CBDC is worth this much Bitcoin and we're doing a Bitcoin standard. But how do we really even know they're holding that much? Because they don't even they're not truthful.
Hmm.
So they could say, this set of wallets is the United States. How would we ever really know that? Because they're not clear with their information. So, I mean, yes, they can say that, but that may not really be true. So,
Yeah. I think Bitcoin has a unique place in the world. Everybody wants to call it something. They want to associate it with something so that it's easier to understand. It's not really that complicated. It's a digital gold. I think is the easiest way to explain it. But people want to say, well, it's a stock or it's a currency or it could be this or it could be that. It's just Bitcoin. It's just something different. Even other cryptocurrencies aren't Bitcoin just because of the limited supply. There's really no other um, thing in the world that exists that is like it. And that's what makes it so unique, and that's what makes it so valuable.
right, right. And there's just so many. Like with stocks, they don't have a limit. I mean, you can always add more to everything, but Bitcoin, you can't. That algorithm just doesn't allow for it.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. It really has a unique place in the world, and that's hard for people to understand, especially if they've been around for a while, and they're like, I've seen stocks go up and down, and I've seen prices go up and down, and presidents come and go. Now there's this new Bitcoin thing, and I just don't get it, right?
right, right. Well, the
So
point of a CBDC, if the government decides that they already are, but they want control and surveillance of what we're doing. And the Lightning Network and Bitcoin just don't believe in that. So they're just never going to get on the same page. They're always going to be fighting with each other. So, they're trying to create this competing system without, the same moral standards. So,
yeah, and there's a lot of work in the government to monitor what we're doing, manipulate how we think, and get us to move in a certain way with all the data gathering and data sets that they're building on us. And so Bitcoin is a refreshing departure from that. That it gives us space to be free. It's
yeah.
really one of the last vestiges of freedom in the country.
Absolutely.
So you drew a parallel to Obamacare mandate, the government forcing citizens to purchase a product. we're forced to pay taxes, carry insurance, comply or lose. And if Bitcoin represents financial freedom, how do we prevent it from becoming just another controlled system? How can we keep it the last vestige of freedom in the US?
Well, we need to educate people because education is key. If we don't know something, we're going to be willingly handing things over to the government if we don't have the education. So if all of us stand up together and say, no, we're not giving you, the keys to our wallets, we're not doing this, then, and you start educating people on why that self custody is important and why not to hand over Bitcoin to, even if it's not the banks, they may require like certain exchanges. So they might say, hey, well, Coinbase is an okay exchange to have it on. So, the importance is teaching people that when you don't hold the keys, you don't own the Bitcoin. And that's really hard to understand but it's already happening in your bank account. You don't hold the money, you don't own the money. They are lending it out. And that's what they want to do with Bitcoin too. I mean, that's just what I foresee happening. But, the value of the Bitcoin community is not your keys, not your coin. So we just really need to hammer that into people so that they understand.
And not all Bitcoin is owned by Americans, so
Right.
they could only control a small portion. There is a significant amount that are owned by Russia and Chinese. And um, so I don't know that one country, because it is so universally owned, mined, and created, that one country could have a monopoly on it and mandate that it be monitored or registered or something like that. I was just on a call the other day, and it's a oil and gas company. They have 100 miners going. I think they said they had old L7s, and I said, well, they're very outdated, and they're at the end of their life cycle at this point. They're a good value for the flare mining, but they're continually going to you're just on a downhill trend.
Right.
They don't want to update those machines because they feel that Bitcoin has plateaued. So state your case. As Bitcoin plateaued, not plateaued? Which side? We're not going to do Bitcoin prediction pricing, but um,
Yeah. So,
what's your view on the price of Bitcoin and why it's stagnant for the past 6 months,
yeah.
and where is it going?
Yeah, so it's crazy because I listened to a podcast this morning, um, actually released by Bitcoin Magazine. And what they were saying, and I align with this view, is that, Bitcoin has a lot more momentum left, that this cycle is just taking longer to get to the peak. And so a lot of it has to do with the quantitative easing within the government, and they have not done it yet. So once that quantitative easing happens, then Bitcoin should go up. So they compared the cycles, every 4-year cycle, and they are saying that this is a different cycle because it's obviously going longer. At this point, we were already at the peak and declining in previous cycles. But this one's a little bit different. The government's it's crazy how Bitcoin is so tied to the value of the US dollar. Is that not crazy? Like, why is that? It was Satoshi Nakamoto American? Like, did he know that? It's just kind of like raised all these questions in my mind. But I
Yeah.
do believe that we're not at the peak yet. I believe that we're getting close. And I think this is a longer cycle. And I think there's some reasons. It's been manipulated. Now we have, big companies like BlackRock that have ETFs that are buying into Bitcoin. And then the ETFs don't really pump the Bitcoin like it should. I think the price should be a lot higher right now, but it's not. But that doesn't mean that I don't think that we aren't going to see a cycle peak. I really, truly, firmly believe that we will. It's just being delayed. And I think the government has a lot to do with that, unfortunately.
There is. I listen to Bloomberg, most of the day, and other, business radio on Sirius XM, and there's a lot of pundits who are talking, and they're talking about the inflation rate, the stock market, and the economy, and the tariffs, and all of the things, and they say, it just doesn't make sense. Like, the numbers, the way that the numbers are, we're not where we should be. Um, like there's some type of force that's moving the economy or the stock market into a higher direction, even though it shouldn't be. And there's consumer confidence there that there shouldn't be. And so gold is going up. And I think we're in a really unique time because we kind of have a wild card in the White House, and you don't know what he's going to do. Like, is he going to do a tariff today? Is he going to do this? Is he going to do that? And so, for some reason, the everything's going in one direction, and no one can really explain why. There's not really, stats and figures and science to show why it's happening.
Right. Typically, we look at the past cycles, we look at the past to determine the future, and we just can't in this case. That doesn't mean that that's a bad thing. It could mean exponentially great things, but it just causes a lot of, it's just nerve wracking right now, okay? Like, that's just
It
how
is,
I
yeah.
feel.
There was another pattern that happened every decade. There's a major correction in the market.
Right.
The latest one was during COVID, and it was really a dead cat bounce. The market corrected, and then it went right back up quickly. There was not a lot of lag there. There was really like days when the market was crashed,
Right.
but then it went right back up. But every 10 years, those things are happening. And with 2028 to 2030 coming, how do you see Bitcoin, the economy, the world? Where does Bitcoin fit into the next recession, be it in 4 years or 10 years or whenever it is?
Right. So the one thing that I love about Bitcoin is that it goes down, but it comes right back up. It's very resilient. And why I love that resilience is because it allows people, just everyday people, to buy into Bitcoin and create wealth for the next generation. So just because it's going down, it's not a bad thing. It's actually an opportunity to buy more. And you may actually think, well, when things go down, when the stock market goes down, when Bitcoin goes down, like I don't have the money to buy in at that point because I've lost so much. Well, you have to flip your mindset because you have to just prepare for the downs. You can't always have wins because if you always have wins, there's only so far you can go up. So you just have to know that the downturn is coming and plan. Planning is key. So, you know, between 2028 and 2030, I do think that there's going to be a massive shift. The United States dollar is going to fail, not necessarily fail. They won't tell us that it's failing. It'll just be like we're shifting into a CBDC.
Yep.
So it's not really like, hey guys, the dollar sucks. It doesn't mean it's worthless. It's more like, hey, we're having an update to your banking system, and we're going to switch over to allowing small payments to be sent bank to bank with what's called a CBDC. But your bank is called Bank of America, so it's going to be BOFC coin. And it's just going to be real smooth, and you're not really going to notice it that much. And then all of a sudden, you no longer are writing checks. You're no longer using cash because every single restaurant is like, oh, well, we take that, we take the BOFC coin and this coin and this coin, or it might all be combined. Who knows? But it's just going to be really, really, they're just going to sneak their way in, and it's just going to be the new normal. And then at that point, because people are so distracted, I'm sure there will be some sort of big distraction in the world when this happens. Maybe it's another COVID outbreak. I don't know. Maybe it's a war. Maybe it's something major will happen for a distraction. That's when they're going to slip the CBDC in. That's when they're going to be requiring people to custody their Bitcoin, not Bitcoin, Bitcoin with, certain exchanges and banks. That's when it's all going to happen. When you're in a very chaotic, devastated state of mind, when that is like the least of your worries, when it should be the most of your worries.
Yeah.
But distraction is usually when we make the most mistakes. So you really have to be aware. I think educating people now that this is going to happen, whether they believe me or not, I mean, at least I'll be aware so that I can help my family and anybody that does believe me. But I do believe that this is going to happen. There's going to be another event. It seems like every few years there's an event. There's 9/11, there's COVID, there's this war, there's this. And then everyone is just so, like, think about it. Let's just say we have another COVID type incident and a close family member dies. You don't want to worry about a CBDC. You could care less what the bank is doing. You're just like, freaking do it. Like, I cannot process this mentally. And that is the point that they want to keep you at.
Yep. And it's the way that you phrased it. Yeah, if there's not an event happening, they're going to make an event. Like,
Yeah.
it seems like no matter what, it always happens. It's too on point to be coincidence that it happens
Yeah.
every 10 years. We have this major reset, and then there's a huge shift. And over the last two resets, we had COVID and we had the recession. You touched a little bit about quantitative easing. Those were the two biggest points of quantitative easing where they printed a lot of money. And so people say, well, before COVID, we could buy a house for $300,000 and now they're $500,000. Houses prices went up. And the truth is that nope, they just printed a lot of money. And so your dollar's worth less, while Bitcoin has continued to go on a different trajectory up.
Right. So it makes no sense to store your money in United States dollar unless you want to be broke, which is, just get the rose-colored glasses off because that's what they want. And for a long time, I had trust in the government and I went through some really hard times and quickly saw that the government really is about what's best for them and what's best for the people funding them. And when you start to understand that, you start making decisions that's best for your family and for you. And sometimes those decisions the government does not like. And unfortunately, also the government goes off of the discretion of the court and the attorneys and the lawyers when looking at cases. So it's like, I'm starting to think about like, okay, well, what if I don't want the bank to custody my Bitcoin, right? And they're going to say, well, you're going to get imprisonment time. Like that judge or that lawyer, not lawyer, but the judge and the prosecutors, regardless of what the law says. So let's just say I'm in Wyoming and it says I can't, it's illegal for me. The government cannot have my keys to my wallet. So it's like, well, okay, well, the law in Wyoming says that. And so I should be covered. But at the end of the day, I will just tell you, because I've been through a court case, they do whatever they want, regardless of what the law says.
Yeah,
There's no protections for us. There really isn't, unless you have a lot of money and you're able to fight with an attorney that can really help you. But they are just betting on that you don't have any. So if you really want to protect yourself, the way is to stack some Bitcoin.
Yeah. So what is some strategies that you have seen where people have gotten into the mining business? I know that there's a bit of fear because it's like, how do we do this mining thing? I'm going to own an AI data center or an HPC data center. And it seems complicated. It seems daunting. But what are some strategies that you have seen that have actually worked where people have gotten into smaller mines or maybe home mining?
Right. So when we start thinking about the United States dollar and how fiat has weight, if we were to take out a loan in fiat, that loan is going to be worth less as we go on. So it almost makes sense. Like if I don't have the USD today to invest in mining, then maybe a loan would be a good option. And I really don't like loans because I feel like you're imprisoned at the bank. But when you're using it in conjunction with Bitcoin, I feel like it gives you a little leverage because you're able to take this fiat currency that has a little bit of interest on it and, buy some units, convert it into Bitcoin, and then hodl it. You're able to, when Bitcoin hits the peak, you can either keep hodling or you can sell a little bit of it, pay off your loan, and then essentially like you've just made money at that point. So any big purchase, that's kind of what I educate on. So there's a few different ways. But once you have Bitcoin, you then have this unique way of running your finances because you're now opened up to being able to take Bitcoin loans and you're able to really open up a market that you haven't ever, I mean, just open up opportunities that you wouldn't have ever had before. And when you start thinking of money differently, taking loans for this kind of thing, I mean, you always have to be careful because there are companies, that over leveraged themselves and went out of business because they took so many loans. But if you're careful and you're strategic and you take like a fiat currency loan, buy machines, and then you're able to use some self control, pay off the loan, reinvest, then I think that's where you can really get in a good sweet spot.
Yeah, you can get money for 11, 12%
Yeah.
on the high end, and that's for business loans in more of a lease type of a setting. And if Bitcoin has gone up 35% year over year, um, and it's done significantly more than that, but we're just looking
Yeah.
at the smaller window of like this halving and like the end of the previous halving. Um, that's a safe place to operate in. You still have a 20% margin if you're getting 11% money, so that's a good place to start. When you look at Bitcoin mining, the future of Bitcoin mining, let's get an objection. Every once in a while, I'm at like an energy fair or like some hacker fest or something, and
Yeah.
they're like, quantum computers is going to destroy Bitcoin, and they're going to come after it next year, next week. What do you know about quantum computing and its fate with Bitcoin?
You know, so quantum computing is like AI, really, right?
It's super fast computers,
Ah,
really big
okay.
computers.
Yeah, so that is kind of an issue, honestly, because the machine manufacturers are constantly coming out with quicker and faster machines, and they're costing more. And so when you're in the Bitcoin mining industry, you start seeing some of these big guys like Bitmain. They're coming out with machine after machine after machine, and you're like, I just bought my S21 200 terahash, and now you have a 473 terahash machine. Like, how can I keep up? How is this okay? And that is a problem. I do think that that is a problem. That is not promoting decentralization of it's not.
Mhm.
So, when you think about that, I think you have to plan for it. So, when you're getting into mining that the machines every 4 years, you're definitely going to need a new machine, but really every 2 years is a good rule of thumb. So, when you look at it, you need to plan for, okay, the difficulty rate is going to be going up. So when you first make your first purchase, don't go buy S19J Pro 100 terahash unless you have free power. Like, really plan for the future. Look at your purchases. So, right now I'm suggesting like the S21 XP 270 terahash to people that are, mining with air and containers, whereas people that are doing hydro, they're looking at the 473 terahash machines. So even though it's expensive and it hurts in the beginning, make sure you get those, because actually what's going to happen, and since I work in the miner resale market all the time, is that you're going to be, so I bought the S21 270 right when it came out, and now, about right now, or maybe in about 6 months, I'm going to try to sell it, and I'm going to sell it at it's going to be worth a lot more than if I wait. So I'm going to sell it and upgrade and use what I've made from one machine and put it towards the next. It's going to just ease that, we're just trading in and we're upgrading. So I do think that that is the way to go. You have to go, like, there's always going to be a quicker, faster computer, just like the iPhone comes out every single year. It's going to happen. So you don't have that mindset. You have a different mindset. You track the numbers, and when it makes sense for you financially, you upgrade.
Yeah, that's a great strategy. I'm so glad that you shared that because it really gives people insight like how do we do it? If we buy 270s right now, how long do we keep them? Because they just came out. We have an AI modeling tool that is proprietary, and it goes through all of the Bitcoin machines, all the ASIC machines, and all of the script coin machines. We have purposely left out all the other machines because the variables on those don't really match up historically and future. But we use some quantile modeling, historical data, and some other tactics to discover which is the best machine or what's the best combination of machines. And the 270 XP is 270 terahash, S21 XP is by far always comes out on top as the best machine, even against the S23 because of the high cost to it, and the cost outweighs the performance of 15% performance increase, but the cost on it is almost double. So it
Right.
really performs well. That's a great machine. And our AI modeling tool agrees. You don't even need an AI modeling tool. You already know, right?
Well, what I also have to say is just you need a tour guide through this whole industry because these little things the miner first starting would not know. One of the unknown knowns about Bitmain is you never buy the first machine that comes out. So of the series, so we have the S21. Well, the T21s had a lot of issues, and the S21, some of them in the beginning had a lot of issues. Their first batch. So now, do not buy the first S23s. If you are getting in right now, buy the S21 XP 270s, and when those S23s start working through the bugs, right before the maybe the S25 comes out, that might be a good time to upgrade because the prices are a little lower and they're going to be more efficient than the next models.
Right.
So it's just all about your strategy and how much you
That's a
know.
great strategy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think people really, if they're getting into the business, talk to Jill. She can give you a lot of information, not only on how ASICs work and making great strategy for purchasing your ASICs, but a lot about Bitcoin and the ethos and the ideology of Bitcoin, which is an important thing to at least understand. You don't have to buy into it and go to the Church of Bitcoin or anything, but at least to know what it's about and why people are passionate about it. Why is there this fanatical base that gets
Right.
the Bitcoin T-shirts and the Bitcoin? You have jewelry, Bitcoin, because it right. Um, because it means so much to people once they understand what Bitcoin is. It's not just a money making activity
Right.
or a wealth building thing. It's something more to that. And I think today you really shared what Bitcoin is from a very passionate, personal level. So I really appreciate you being on the show today.
Well, I can say that Bitcoin is the only freedom I've ever found. So, yeah.
So
So,
awesome. And I think we'll leave it on that. Thank you for joining us,
yes.
Jill.
Thank you.
That wraps up today's episode of Flair to Fortune. And I want to thank Jill Ford for her insights in Bitcoin mining and the upcoming halving, and why now is such a critical time to consider mining. As Jill said so powerfully, Bitcoin is the only freedom I've ever found. Whether you're interested in financial opportunity, the technological innovation, or the philosophy of self sovereignty, Bitcoin mining offers a unique path forward. If you want to learn more about getting started with mining or just need guidance on machine selection and strategy, reach out to Jill at Bit4 Digital. She's a fantastic resource for anyone looking to navigate the space. Thanks for listening to Flair to Fortune, and if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with someone who might benefit from learning Bitcoin mining. Until next time, keep stacking those sats.